everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Perch. Bill Spalding here with you as we continue to get to know the new Boston College football staff. And Matt Applebaum, the offensive line coach, is here with us and doing something new this week, Coach. Folks listening on the Perch audio app might not know it, but we're on video as well. You get to be the model, the first coach we see here on video. So appreciate you taking the time. We're giving the people what they want.
Yeah, I don't know if this is what the people want, but I appreciate it. If I had known it was going to be on video, maybe I'd have try to get a haircut or shave or something like that. But
I'm letting it grow. I'm letting it grow too. We're getting pretty shaggy here. Things are really unprecedented right now. How are you hanging in there and trying to balance everything in these circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, just trying to stay as regimented as possible. Coach Hafley had a great plan for us and the staff. We have a lot of these Zoom meetings. I spent a lot of time looking at the computer screen, but that's okay. And really the day is really segmented. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I finish up my last meeting and it's the end of the regular work day, I try to get out of the house once a day, go for a walk or something like that, just to get some fresh air and some exercise. The weekends can be a little boring. I'm crushing Netflix. Yeah.
What's your go-to at this point?
I'm watching Homeland right now.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's on Showtime. Yeah, but I'm watching Homeland right now. Okay. It's going great. Awesome. It's a really good show. I watched Tiger King just like everybody else did. That was pretty good. I watched Ozarks. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right now we're crushing Homeland. So we're about to finish up season 2 tonight, I think.
All right, good show. You'll get done just in time for the next season of Billions to kick off on Showtime. Yeah. You spent the last couple of years coaching at Towson. So when you got to the off season, Coach Hafley got the job at Boston College. What was the process like, and what was it about what Coach Hafley was doing that really attracted you to want to be part of this?
Right. So the process of getting a job in the first place, they were doing their research on different guys for the job. And, they can talk on that a little bit more, but my name came up to both of them, and that's what kind of got the ball rolling. And, we had some phone calls and an in-person interview, and away we went. In terms of what attracted me to the job or what Coach Hafley's doing, everything attracted me to the job. It's a traditionally strong football program, traditionally has had great offensive line play. It's in a great city. Coach Hafley from the jump came across like a great guy. It's a people business, and you really want to be around people that you want to be around, so you're going to spend a lot of time with the other coaches. You're going to spend a lot of time with the players, and I'm very fortunate that I really enjoy being around our coaches, starting with Coach Hafley, and I really enjoy being around our players. The type of kid that gravitates to a Boston College, very easy to be around those kind of kids, converse with those kind of kids, and not have to chase them around like a babysitter. So it's been a great experience so far.
Well, you mentioned the success in your position group at offensive line here at Boston College. You look at what BC's done, send an offensive line to the next level, and it's one of those like O-line U factories in terms of getting guys to the next level. So what did you see in terms of like the culture of the offensive line room when you had your first few meetings with this group?
Oh, I think there was a great culture. I actually know the previous offensive line coach, Phil Troutwine. Me and him worked together at Davidson College for 2 years. He's a personal friend of mine. I think he's an excellent football coach. I think he did a great job of instilling a culture, recruiting quality talent and quality human beings. And that was a great deal for me to be able to come into that. Each coach kind of has his own way of doing things, and I'm certainly not the same as Phil, not for better or worse. But the kids have been very receptive. They're hardworking. They're detailed in their preparation. They want to be great players. And like I said, they take care of their business, so I'm not having to babysit them. We can just focus on the important things. So it's been awesome so far in that regard. Really excited to get back to working with them.
And, maybe sometimes a different situation than what often is the case when you're coming in as a new staff or a new group. A lot of times you're taking over a team that, maybe needs a total rebuild, particularly in your position group that's not the case. So obviously you want to have good players and a good culture, but does it add any type of pressure or increased expectations when you're taking over a unit and a room that, expects to have all conference players, expects to send guys to the next level and be, the engine of the team.
Right. I mean, no, I don't feel that way. I can see how from the outside it would feel that way, but when you're living in the day-to-day of it, man, you just don't think of things like that. At least I don't. I don't know how anyone else may feel, but no, I don't feel that way. I feel fortunate for so many reasons. All of them I pretty much just laid out. I really enjoy being around our guys, and I think they're primed to have a good season up front. So I mean, I'm excited to get to work with them and coach them. And I mean, geez, I've been coaching them. I mean, over this time, I've been doing the Zoom things, but really get around them again. It's not the same, to be around them again. That's why you coach, to be around the guys, and I'm looking forward to getting that back.
Yeah, I'm interested in some of the personality of some of these guys, because oftentimes we don't get to see a lot of the offensive linemen. It's not a flashy position. So take me in the room. Who's vocal? Who has been maybe one of the key leaders you've leaned on during the transition as you got the guys to buy into what you and the rest of the staff were doing here?
Right. Well, I mean, the offensive line is always a cast of characters. I mean, it's a great group to be around. It's funny because Coach Hafley, has never really spent a ton of time around the offensive line. He's been a defensive backs coach, which is as far away from the line as possible. He's been a defensive coordinator. Now as a head coach, he's, integrating himself into all the different rooms. And he's like wowed by how great it is to be around the offensive line. Now, I do think we have a great group of guys, don't get me wrong, but, offensive line rooms around the country are all great. I mean, it's just like they're just interesting characters. Usually have very bright guys in the room and self-depreciating guys, funny guys. They all have their own little deal, and certainly not a room for the fair-hearted. And people are going to be busting chops a lot in that room, and it's enjoyable to be in. In terms of your question, who's been a leader in the room? I mean, we have a couple guys that stand out in that regard. I mean, Ben Petrula has played a lot of football. I think he's a guy that the guys look up to. But Alec Lindstrom does a great job. Zion Johnson, for being a relatively new guy, I think he's earned a lot of people's respect in the way he goes about his business. And they all kind of have their own little way of how they, try to bring leadership to the group. They're not all the same in that regard. Some are more talkative than others. But it's all been good from that regard. Yeah.
Well, you just mentioned, three of the guys who are coming back that have starting experience. You throw Tyler Vrabel into that mix as well. And so you come back with, four guys who have played at least, say, half a season as a starter, if not more. A lot of these guys more than half a season as a starter. How much easier does that make your job when you've got so many guys who kind of understand what the deal is at this level?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely eases the burden a little bit. I mean, that goes without saying, and Vrabes does a great job too as a returning starter. I mean, for a guy that really is relatively young in his career, he's got a veteran presence about himself. He knows how to go about his business, and so yeah, having all the returning experience is definitely an ease, but there's a lot of work to still be done.
Yep.
You play with 5 first off, and reality is you usually play with more over the course of the season. Hopefully we're able to just, stay healthy and all that, but we need to develop depth. There's not a lot of guys in the room that have played a lot other than the guys that are returners. But I will say that I think there's some talent in those guys, though. I'm really excited about a lot of those guys. That's one of the disappointing things about spring practice being canceled, is really being able to work with those guys. Not that I don't want to work with the other guys, but those guys have experience. They kind of know what it's supposed to look like a little bit, and some of the younger guys that haven't got a ton of game reps that, over the course of a fall season maybe get, put on scout team or something, and they're not, getting coached a certain kind of way like you do in the off season. That's really what spring ball is all about, is to really develop those guys and bring those guys around. And, we lost that opportunity, but so did most people. So, I mean, it's not like we're playing different, hand or anything like that. It's just frustrating for those guys too, because they want to be great players. Not just frustrating for the coaches, it's frustrating for those guys. They want to develop, they want to be great players. And that's just a hindrance to them, but we'll get through it.
All right, we got a lot more football to talk about, but I feel like we can't go any further, especially now that we've talked about Tyler Vrabel, without me having to ask you. Have you gotten any explanation from him on any clarification on what was going on in the Vrabel household during the NFL draft?
Yeah,
That was a wild room.
I didn't even know what had happened. So I actually had a Zoom meeting with all my players' parents on Friday of last week, just to answer any questions. And it wasn't a formal thing; it was an informal thing. And Tyler's mother was on, and she mentioned something had happened, and I didn't really know what she was talking about, but I guess everyone else knew what she was talking about. And then Dave Bowen, who's our assistant offensive line coach, former BC guy, he kind of shot me the information that I didn't have, I guess, which was what was going on there and how it was covered on, I guess, Barstool or something like that. And I asked Tyler about it the other day, and he said, I was just sitting on the couch. Just kind of got caught at a weird angle. So I don't know.
His brothers, though, were rocking the skin suit and the mullet. I mean, that was looked like a fun room to be in, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess, you're trapped in the house. And who gets trapped in the house and gets to have the NFL draft be, broadcast from their living room? It's a very interesting experience. They're just trying to make the most of it. Have fun.
Yeah, not a bad deal at all. You talked about how offensive linemen generally are really intelligent and have to process a lot. And I think that's something the average fan maybe doesn't really understand. They think that offensive linemen are just out there trying to bash the head of the guy on the other side in front of them. But I mean, at this level of the game, offensive linemen have as much as basically any position to process pre-snap and during the course of play, right?
Oh, yeah. It's impossible to really probably explain in this kind of setting in a way that would make sense to people what's going on for those guys. Yeah. Me and Coach Signetti were talking about, that there's a reason that the quarterbacks and the linemen in most programs or pro football teams kind of gravitate towards each other, because they have to be a certain kind of guy to have success at their positions. They got to be able to process information, and even the smallest little thing being off could result in absolute, disaster. So, whether that's just being able to identify what's going on in a moment's notice, how that can change the smallest element of your technique, and all those things tie together. And it's not just you doing it, but you being able to work with other people on the line in a moment's notice, being able to be on the same page and do all those things. I mean, it's the difference between like a TFL or a sack or a big play, I mean, the smallest little detail. So there's a lot of information processing that's going on for the linemen. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned technique too, because, obviously different run block, pass block technique. And this was a program in the past few years that was really built to run the football downhill, a lot of run blocking, big physical team. As the schematics are bound to shift a bit with a new staff, are these offensive linemen going to be asked to do some things, maybe differently than they have in their previous experiences?
Well, I mean, I think any coach has, certain techniques that he believes in that may be different than the last guys. That doesn't mean one guy is right or one guy is wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of things that me and Coach Trotwine see eye to eye on that there's almost no change. And then there's some things that maybe I see a little different or he sees a little different, and that's okay. In terms of like more big picture, like running the ball versus passing the ball, I'm not going to get too much into what our plan is with our schematics, but I think you just got to be able to do both. And those guys are getting coached how to pass block. They just weren't necessarily calling a lot of pass plays, but it wasn't like they weren't getting coached how to pass block. I would like to think that would be more balanced, but I'm not going to speak for Coach Signetti on that. I mean, at the end of the day, Coach Signetti is going to call the game that gives us the best chance to win.
Let's talk about you a bit. You're pretty familiar with New England college football. You played at UConn, part of kind of building the UConn program that eventually culminated with that team that went to the Fiesta Bowl. What was that experience like for you, and how much did you learn as a player that you've now taken with you as a coach?
The experience was awesome. I played for Randy Edsel, who's the current coach now, in the second tenure there, and it was a very interesting experience looking back on it now as a coach, like looking at what we kind of went through while I was there. I mean, my first season was the first year that UConn was a full-fledged Division I program. So They were FCS or 1AA back then. And then they had 2 years of a transition. And then their first season playing true Division I football was 2002. And that was my first season. So I was a freshman then. We actually opened our season at Boston College. And never could quite beat Boston College when I was at UConn. So obviously I'm familiar with Boston College from being at UConn. But anyways, it was very interesting. So, you start there and then, entering the Big East about halfway through, getting to a bowl game. You talk about the facility upgrades. I mean, I could tell you stories about the facilities we had when I first got there. I mean, oh my goodness. But, then we ended up having great facilities, and just seeing the program really built from scratch was very interesting. As it pertains to me as a coach, I mean, obviously I learned a lot of life lessons going through a college football program and, Coach Etzel's program specifically. But, in terms of line play, I actually was a defensive lineman my first 3 years. So I never played offensive line growing up. I was a thinner guy growing up, so I was more of a tight end and a defensive end, mostly a defensive player. I was recruited to be a defensive lineman at UConn. And quickly was moved from D-end to D-tackle, and then just got closer and closer to the ball, and then they just flipped me to their side. So my last 2 years, what happened was after the Motor City Bowl, we were losing 3 starters on the offensive line. I was a backup on the defensive line. I was playing but not playing much. And the guys that were in front of me were either the same class or younger. So I saw an opening on the offensive side of the ball. So I asked to move to offensive line because I wanted a chance to start. And I ended up being a 2-year starter. And I was really, to be honest, I was a pretty poor player in my first year. I started all the games, but I mean, I was probably a liability out there. And then my second year, by no means a world beater, but I was a solid lineman. And really the growth between the first year and the second year wasn't that I necessarily got like way bigger or stronger or anything like that, but just kind of like learned the game and learned like how a lineman has to play. I give a lot of credit to that to my coach my last year, Coach Mike Foley, who also coached at UMass at one point. He's a great guy and a great coach, taught me a lot about the game. And, but I figured out a lot for myself too, like how I had to play within my own skill set, understanding what a defense was doing and how that could affect me and just made me more efficient. And I take a lot of those things into how I coach my guys now. So there is that element too, not just like maybe some drill work or technique that I learned, during that time, but just like the perspective of how to understand a defense and how that can affect your block, and then how you understand your own body and your own limitations and how to get people blocked within your own skill set.
When during that process did you start thinking that like coaching was something that you were interested in getting into?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me that question because I actually did I got interviewed by one of my current players, Jack Conley, for one of his classes today, and it was about something along these lines. I just answered that question about an hour ago. I didn't like grow up thinking I was going to be a football coach. I wasn't like one of those guys. I always just wanted to be a player. So I grew up wanting to be a player. I wanted to play as long as I could play and play at the highest level. I played a little arena football when I was done playing, and I hurt my one shoulder in college. And I hurt my other shoulder playing arena, and I knew that I wasn't going to end up having a pro football career. So it was like, well, what can I do to feel like fulfilled? And I thought coaching would be the best avenue. That's really what it came down to. I always, all the things that go into being a player and the things you enjoy about being a player, I thought I could get out of coaching, and I do. And then I always enjoyed the schematic element. Even as a player, I always try to challenge myself to see the schematics and be able to block everything up the way a coach could. So I always was intrigued by that part of the game too. And that just led to me getting into coaching.
So you start your coaching career at Central Connecticut State. Then you spent 3 years in the NFL as part of the player personnel staff, and then as an offensive assistant with Washington. Before we get into what you learned in Washington, there's those memes where it's say Instagram versus reality. So you have how you present something and then how it actually is. Give me that for what it's like being a young NFL, say offensive assistant or personnel staff member, the Instagram, what everybody thinks versus the reality of what it actually is.
I mean, I don't know exactly what the Instagram would be. I don't even have Instagram, but I mean, I guess it would be, some famous coach that makes tons of money and everyone knows him or something. I don't really know that, but the reality of being that person that is, in his mid-20s, I mean, the pay is so low, it's laughable. All right. No benefits, no health benefits or anything like that. The hours put in is astronomical. And really, you don't get a whole lot of respect in the building. I mean, not that you're mistreated necessarily, but you're just, your opinion is not really that valued, and you got to figure that out pretty quick. But I mean, obviously, unbelievable experience. I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I didn't go through that in so many ways. I mean, just the relationships made that led to even really this job. I mean, some of the connections I made in Washington, and then from a knowledge perspective, and then, I mean, everything. I mean, honestly, I knew I was fortunate when I got on with those guys, but it's impossible until maybe now, for me to fully comprehend how fortunate I was and all the good things that would come with that.
Yeah, and since then you coached again in the NFL with Jacksonville in 2014. A lot of stops along the way at the college level as well. Who are some of the coaches that have been maybe the most influential in your development and in you now being here at Boston College?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say there's like one coach that I would say like this person has influenced me in a way that no one else. I try to learn every year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I try to learn in every job. So, I mean, each spot along the way, I've learned a lot. Now, as I get older and maybe I get more hardened in my opinions, maybe I don't learn as much as maybe just that young, fresh guy. But at the end of the day, I learned something from every job, literally every single job. When I was with the Redskins at first, I was working in scouting. So I'm learning how to evaluate different positions, getting into coaching, working for, Coach Shanahan. We're both Coach Shanahan's. Chris Furster was the line coach. I mean, so much of what he taught me, Chris, is in my techniques of line play still. So much of what I learned from Kyle in terms of schematics or in what I believe in. So much of what I learned in how to go about being a professional coach and how to approach your business, I learned from Coach Shanahan. So, I mean, just invaluable. At University of Miami, like Al Golden gave me a great platform for a young GA. I mean, I wasn't treated like that. I had a lot more input than maybe a traditional GA has, but like that came with responsibility and learning and growing through that process. I mean, and like I said, each stop along the way. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, Southeastern Louisiana. I mean, I hadn't been involved in option football the way I was there ever before. When I say option football, I don't mean like your old school triple option or anything like that. I'm talking about zone read or power read or some of the quarterback style runs you see nowadays in college football being pretty popular, or your RPOs or your triple option RPOs or any of that stuff. Like, I hadn't really been a part of that. And if we had called it at the other place, like other places I've been would have been more pro style attacks. And we ran some of those plays maybe at those other places, but not in a way where we were fully invested in them and had all the answers to the problems and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, what an amazing experience for me. I'm coming from the professional level, Jacksonville Jaguars, running a pro football offense. Everything is pro mentality. To go there and learn that style of offense and the nuances of that style of offense, not to mention meet great friends, but if we're just talking about just from a football perspective, I mean, I grew a lot in that setting, Davidson College, getting a chance to be a coordinator and run the whole offense and, being humble enough to know what you don't know and making sure that you're empowering the people around you that they can do their jobs and help you out in those areas. And and each stop along the way.
Yeah. Hey, you grew up outside of Philly, Yardley, Pennsylvania. I'm assuming were you a big Eagles fan growing up?
Well, I actually, that's where I went to middle school and high school.
Okay.
I actually was born in New York, and I lived in Brooklyn and Staten Island, New York.
Okay.
About middle school age.
So not an Eagles fan then.
No, the opposite, I guess. My family is Giants fans.
Okay.
So pretty passionate Giants fans.
Yeah.
I was a pretty passionate Giants fan. My last year of being a fan of the Giants was the year that they actually beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And then I got into coaching. Then I got on with the Redskins. So obviously I couldn't be a fan of the Giants because that played a big role in me keeping my job, was beating them. So, now I don't really root for a pro team or anything like that. I mean, I have a lot of buddies that work in different pro teams, different staffs, and I like to see them do well so they can keep their jobs and all of those things. And I just like to see good ball, and that's really all I'm watching for when I watch games now.
I'm curious, with that experience that you had in the scouting department or in the scouting side of things, player personnel with Washington, how much do you think that helps you even now, more like when you're evaluating like potential recruits and high school kids and looking at that tape, maybe even evaluating it with a different eye than you would if you were just a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps me. I think it helps me a lot. At the end of the day, I still don't live in those worlds, so I'm not going to see, let's say, a DB. There are going to be things about that player that I'm not going to see as clearly as our DB coaches or Coach Halfley, who's got a DB background, are going to see. But do I think that maybe I'm able to see it more clearly than if I had not had that experience? I definitely think that's true.
And we're just coming off NFL draft week. Just how crazy were those weeks when you were working in the player personnel department, getting ready, the months that go into it? I'm assuming like it's like an accountant before tax day or something like that, getting ready for those weeks, right?
Oh, yeah. No, there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of meetings that go into it, and everyone does it differently because, when I worked in Washington, we had two different regimes there while I was there. So I saw two totally different ways of running the draft. Vinny Serrato, Jim Zorn versus Bruce Allen and Mike Shanahan. Those were two vastly different ways of running it. Different way of doing things. But no, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and you'd love to be able to recruit that way. There's so much more of a guessing game with the recruiting because, I mean, you think about all the resources that the NFL has when they're drafting prospects, and yet still mistakes are made every year, of course. Recruiting is way more – there's more prospects. There's much less information, But it was great to go through those processes. I learned a lot.
All right, and final question from me. If there's, like, say, a middle school, a high school offensive lineman that's watching or listening to this right now, and they were curious, they wanted to spend some of their spare time here during the quarantine watching, like, tape of, NFL offensive linemen who do it particularly well. Past or present, who would you recommend the first person's YouTube highlights they gotta pull up and watch?
YouTube highlights. Well, I mean, sometimes some of the truly great players don't necessarily have what you'd consider like clinic quality technique.
Yeah.
They're just like, freaks of nature that can do whatever they got to do to get guys blocked. Yeah. A guy I always really liked, actually just retired, Joe Staley from the 49ers.
Yeah.
I think that he is a great player. I think he's very talented. Don't get me wrong. He's super talented. He can run. He's twitched up, all those things. But he's not like a physical marvel. Let's say like the guy that just replaced him, Trent Williams. I mean, I've been around Trent Williams. That guy is something that, there's only so many of those people on the planet Earth. I mean, we're Joe, though, I mean, technician, played just so hard and clean. I mean, I went to visit those guys actually. This was last summer. I mean, time flies, but and I was just amazed at how hard Joe Staley was practicing in OTAs. It turned out to be his last year of a long career. I mean, you go to different pro OTAs, mini camps. Some of those guys don't even practice at all. Those real vets, and he's out there taking to some rookie in a run blocking drill. Just the old line. He's taking it to him and kind of talking smack to him, and it just goes to show you like that's probably why he had so much longevity. Because not only is he a technician, not only is he tough and knows the game, but he practices the right way.
Great. Well, Matt, really appreciate your time. Best of luck getting through things over these next weeks and months, and we look forward to getting to see you back out on a football field sometime here in the near future.
For sure. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.